Hello guys, it's John Messenger. Today I'm going to explain my Beyblade election theory. This is a theory I came up with just based on some of the release patterns that we've been getting for DB and BU. By the way, I just want to preface, I'm not a theory channel, so if you're looking for Beyblade theories and stuff, I'm not your guy, but I just want to make this one because I feel like it was actually kind of interesting. So basically, this has to do with the Beyblade election that was, basically, it was a thing that they did late in 2020, where they let us vote on 18 different bays. And these 18 bays, they'd go against each other in this vote. And the winner would get a DB evolution, or at the time, just a Season 6 evolution. And that was the whole idea of it. So this election concludes, nothing else really came of it, except we knew that the winner would get a DB evolution, and the winner was Valkyrie. But fast forward to now, and I've noticed a lot of the bays we're getting are just from this election. I thought it was coincidence because, okay, here's the thing, a lot of these bays in the election, they're really popular. I figure they get evolutions, but there's been one piece of news recently that has been very interesting to me, and I kind of feel like it supports this theory. So anyway, let me just get into it with the DB evolutions and stuff. So first up, in DB itself, we had 12 bays. Many of these were new motifs, well not many, but 4 of these slots were taken by new motifs. Belial took up 2, being the protag bay that also got an evolution during DB. Raphael kind of being the antagonist bay, and, we get a typical rare bay here with Solomon. The other 8 slots are mostly legends, the only exception being Bahamut. This struck me as kind of weird at first, but here's the thing. If you consider, Fafnir being a left stamina type, Longinus being a left attack type, we'll probably see a Helios evolution, considering that, I don't think they'll skip protagonists, so we'll probably see Helios evolution for a left balance type. Again, I'll talk more about Helios and stuff later. So a left defense type would make sense for the final system of burst to include, so I think that's why they would have made Bahamut as an evolution. It makes sense to me anyway. But the other 7 are all legend bays. So Valkyrie takes up 2 slots. We also got, Spriggan, Longinus, and Fafnir, all very likely choices. We kind of knew we'd get them, These aren't surprising. Ragnarok as well falls in that category. I know Ragnarok did skip GT, but GT was weird, so Ragnarok was pretty expected as well. Now, here's where things get a little bit more interesting. So Phoenix was a pretty interesting choice. Why did they choose to bring back Phoenix of all bays? Well, it's popular. That's probably all there was to it. But it also does, give us another Legend Bay, as well as one from the election, so I don't think DB did a ton of interesting stuff here. They just brought back some popular bays. There was nothing really to it, The only interesting thing being Valkyrie, which got 2 evolutions, as it was the election winner. The election only did state that the winner would receive an evolution in DB. It didn't say anything else. We knew we'd get Valkyrie, so it was kind of weird that they just made a new Valkyrie, Like, oh, okay, it's not really going to be that interesting. But they made 2, so I think that, it's probably what they did. But they're definitely following this election. So, with BU, we got Divine Belial. Whatever, it's just a Belial evolution. Kind of just a start and a transition us into BU. But then we got Kirbius. Now, Kirbius is where things start to actually get interesting. So, here's the thing about Kirbius. Of the election bays, 15 of them are legend bays. So you have them all lined up here. Valkyrie, Spriggan, Ragnarok, Death Scyther, Wyvern, Excalibur, Zeus, Longinus, Satan, Fafnir, Achilles, Phoenix, Dragon, Diablos, and Genesis. All 15 are legend bays. The 3 non-legend bays are Kirbius, Kronos, and a Knight. Keep these 3 in mind, because this is kind of what the theory is based on here. Kirbius is by far the most sensible of the 3, because it was one of the original 4, and I kind of feel like it should have been a legend anyway. It's almost like a pseudo 16th Legend Bay in some regards, at least in my opinion, It's been there since the start. So, that said, okay, Kirbius, it makes sense to evolve. It's one of the original 4. It's not a legend with a popular motif, plus it was in this election. Now, June, it's Dragon. I mean, it's a Legend Bay, it's popular, it's a protagonist Bay, and from the election, adds up. Things definitely get a little bit more interesting once we get to July. July is the big B200 starter release, and this will be Excalibur. So why is this important? Why is Excalibur? Why am I hyping this up? So basically, in the election, Excalibur actually got second place. It was the run-up to Valkyrie. Now keep in mind, they didn't say anything about a runner-up. They said nothing about this. They just said the winner gets a DB evolution. Or a Season 6 evolution, rather. So they're clearly looking at this election. They have to be. Why else would they choose Excalibur to be the starter release? You could just say it's a popular motif and it's pretty interesting. Honestly, fair enough. But it's still, to me, it's just interesting that they chose the runner-up to be this big B release. So I feel like there definitely had to be some influence there. August is Achilles. Okay, I'm not really even going to explain Achilles. I think everyone expects an Achilles. Same with kind of like Dragon and stuff. Of course it's going to be in BU. September's where it gets interesting. There was a recent rumor, which is very credible, by the way. There's very credible sources for this. That we're getting a random booster in September with a Knight evolution. Knight really caught me off guard, honestly. Why would they choose to evolve Knight of all days? Obviously, we don't have any stamina types anymore. That's a big difference between, an older burst and modern burst is they used to make a ton of stamina types, they just don't anymore. The only ones you ever really get are Ragnarok and Fafnir. So bringing in Knight. Okay, it's a new stamina type, but why wouldn't you pick Zeus? Zeus is a lot more popular, unless they're saving it for a later release, which I personally think will happen. But there's something interesting that I noticed with a connection here. So, like I said, there's 15 of the 18 election bays are legend bays. 3 are not. Kirbyus is the first of them, and it was a prize bay. Knight is the second. Knight is also a prize bay. This is really interesting to me. The 2 of the 3 non-legend bays from the election are prize bays, and we have no word on a third random booster yet anyway, so that's not out the window either. I just found it really interesting that the 3 kind of, I guess you could call them lesser bays, are the ones that they're choosing to make into prize bays. So, maybe I'm just looking way too far into this, but something just strikes me as weird about this. Why would they have chosen Knight of all bays, It was one of the 2 other choices from the election that would have actually just been kind of crazy, weird, why bring this thing back, Like I said, everything in the election makes sense except for Knight and Kronos. They were very random picks. So I'm thinking, what if the election was not that relevant at all? Maybe it, showed who would get a bigger focus, but what if these were the bays that they already had decided on making for DB and BU, aside from, evolutions for, actual, not evolutions, but, new DB motifs, like Belial. Plus the 3 Sparking bays, I'm fairly certain those will get in. The 3 more prominent ones, Hyperion, Helios, Lucifer. I think those will get BU evolutions as well, because, Hyperion and Helios, they're both Protag bays, and Lucifer would be the one main antagonist left out. I just don't think that they would do that. They weren't in the election because, probably because it was during Sparking still, when they made this. So that might have been a factor. I still think they'll happen regardless. It's like one of the other, oddballs of this theory is that you can't explain these 3, but at the same time, I mean, they make sense. We have Bahamut, and that wasn't part of it either, so I don't think it's, completely out the window. I think it still would make sense. But I just think that they really might have just showed off all of the other bays that they were planning on making for DB and BU from this election. They're clearly choosing bays from it. I mean, again, why else would they choose Knight? There's not a lack of stamina types that could be chosen, There's a ton of old ones that they could bring back. Knight is just a very weird choice to me, especially choosing it over Zeus, which, again, I still think Zeus will come back. But, yeah, I don't know, I find this is, really, really weird. It'd be a really rare coincidence if this was not the case, especially with Kirbyus and Knight both being random booster prize bays. There has to be some correlation, right? Or it was just the most weird, coincidence of all time. But I'm really thinking there's a correlation here. But, well, there's one problem here. I can't see the election results. The election results only went to the top 8. Now, they did say that there's all these election results in the Korokoro, aside from number 1. I've only ever managed to find the top 8. I looked around and asked around. I was not able to find any election results from 9 through 18, so I don't know if they exist or not. I tried to look before making this video. That's why I actually haven't uploaded in a little bit longer than I would have liked to, because I want to make this video, and I was trying to hunt that down, but I couldn't. But still, the top 8, that gives us some information into like what we could be seeing. So number 8 was Wyvern, number 7, Spriggan, number 6, Fafnir, 5, Achilles, 4 was Phoenix, 3rd, Death Scyther, 2nd, Excalibur, 1st, Valkyrie. So these are the top 8, you know. So Knight wasn't even like that highly placed, and considering some of the other competition it had, while obviously I don't have the results in front of me, because we don't know them to my knowledge, I would find it very unlikely that Knight placed well against all of these other important bays. Again, why choose Knight and Kronos to go up against some of the most prominent bays in all of Burst when they each have only made one appearance? That's kind of why I think that the election was literally just showing us what we're getting in DB and BU. I mean, like, again, it just doesn't make sense to me. And if they would have thrown out, like, Bahamut and the 3 Sparking Bays, that'd be confirmed. That's why I'm even calling this a theory at this point. Well, maybe not confirmed. That might be getting ahead of myself, but still. It would make it a lot more likely, too. But, regardless, let's talk about the other bays that aren't, leaked or released already. So past Knight, we have a few other bays here. I have them, all the 18 lined up here. I'm sure you've noticed it's been like 12 minutes. Well, unless you haven't looked at the video and you're just listening, and that's fair enough. So anyway, let me actually give up my predictions to kind of how they'll even release them. I'm going to give you guys like a roadmap. I could just go down the line and just talk about each bay individually, but I feel like giving a roadmap is a little bit more interesting, because 10 more bays after September sounds a little far-fetched, I know. Takatomi's been kind of lazy with that. Like, later in the year we don't really get as many bays. But it's the last part of Burst. I think that they might, try a little bit harder. Plus, we had a ton of DB filler, and I think the reason to why is because, we're not getting any filler for BU. Like, there's literally no anime or manga. What is there to even fill at this point? So I don't think we'll see BU filler. At least I really hope not. So anyway, let me give you guys my roadmap. So first up in October, after the September random booster with Knight, I think we'll see a SP set similar to the one we saw last year, that came with, Belial, Phoenix, and Perseus. I think this will contain all of these Sparking Bays. Hyperion, Helios, Lucifer, just all in the line. Just release them at once, It'd make a lot of sense to me. I think all 3 Sparking Bays in one set, kind of as a trio, it would make sense, instead of just releasing random ones with each other, so. Yeah. Alright, sorry about that random jump cut. Anyway, so, one other thing to note about this set. Don't expect many new parts. If we actually got a set with 3 new motifs, well, not new motifs, 3 new evolutions, the part selection would probably be pretty lackluster in terms of new parts. I'd say at best maybe like Hyperion has a new disc, Helios has a new armor. But also with Lucifer, it's probably the least likely of anything I'm talking about here, but I also want to make sure to mention Metal Bearing Drift. This is a special campaign driver that they released, and these parts usually will get a full release at some point. And honestly, what's a better way to release it than throwing it on the bay that had the original Drift, Lucifer. So I feel like, it'd make a lot of sense. Otherwise, or maybe they'll just do like Hyperion, Helios, and a 3rd bay that's like just some random bay, and, just maybe it looks like Lucifer, but isn't. That'd be kind of stupid, but yeah, I think they'll do Lucifer, at least I hope. Honestly, it's the least likely of anything I'm talking about here, but I still think it has a good chance. Next up is November. November is where I think we'll actually see Wyvern. Wyvern did get to, 8th place, which is a pretty decent, spot considering that we have seen evolutions to base that place lower. Wyvern, it's a pretty staple defense type for Burst as well. I mean, it's extremely popular. So I'd be very surprised if we didn't see a Wyvern as part of the original group. So yeah. Also, why November? Well, we have quite a few defense types down the line, so I want to split them up a little bit. Plus, I also think that pairing Wyvern and Death Scyther is something that happens a lot, and so I wanted to put Wyvern here to pair it with the December booster, Death Scyther. I'm actually really confident on Death Scyther being our December booster, and here's why. December boosters are usually, the main December releases, I should say, are usually very prevalent. Usually they have a lot of big plot relevance, but since we're in BU, well, we don't really have that, so it'll just be an important release, probably with a lot of new parts. I still think July is a bigger release since it's our starter, and December is probably just going to be a booster. But there is one important thing to note here. Death Scyther got third place in the election. Valkyrie's done. Excalibur got, the big July starter. I think it makes sense for the next in line to get the December booster, and that's Death Scyther, so that's why I'm putting him here. I think we'll also see something similar to DB with a split, like an early December booster and then like a late December random booster. I think this is where we'll get Kronos, because again, I mentioned earlier, the the three oddballs from the election that are not legends, I think they'll be the prize base for this. I was gonna say season, but I guess BU's not really a season. I guess line of bays. Now we get to January. Now, honestly, the January, February, and March boosters could all be mixed. This is just the order I put them in. I said January Zeus, February Satan, and then March Diablos. I put Zeus in January just because I feel like that's the only one that kind of would fill a January role well. The other two, I put them there for reasons. So Zeus, it's a very popular sound type. If they're making a Night Evolution, I would be very surprised if they end up skipping over Zeus. It just seems a little bit far-fetched to me. Satan, alright, I'm gonna be honest, I have absolutely zero reason for them to say Satan is an evolution. Satan is kind of popular, but not that popular. I guess it's a legend bait, but literally the only reason Satan I'm even mentioning right now is because it is a legend bait and was part of the election. I highly doubt that they make every other election bait and just skip one. And plus, if Knight can get in and potentially Kronos, I feel like they'd make Satan as well. Also, the reason why I chose this for February is because I think that they could always do a 4th random booster. And while it is a legend bait, and it kind of does slightly break my theory, it's by far has to be the least popular legend bait. I'd be very surprised if I'm wrong on that. I don't think I am. Come on. Who goes around talking about Satan being their favorite legend bait? Barely anyone. So I can't imagine it plays well in the poll either. It has to be bottom 4. So due to its I feel like it's just a lot less popular than the other legend bays, and because of that, I decided to place it lower than the other legend bays, and potentially even putting it into a random booster slot. Next up is March. So with Diablos, I put it here because I feel like it'd make a lot of sense for a penultimate release. Diablos was done dirty in Sparking with Death and Abyss. They sucked. I think returning to form and having one solid Diablos evolution, no weird split, just a single evolution, even if it ends up being similar to Astral Spriggan, I feel like it'll make people a lot happier than just making Death and Abyss Part 2. Seeing this redemption, I feel like it makes sense for a second to last base, so I've decided to put it here. Then we get to April of 2023. The final burst release. Saying it now, Genesis. Considering that we probably will have used up all of our very exciting, big motifs by this point, Genesis would make the most sense. You could argue Death Scyther being the last bay, since it placed 3rd in the poll, maybe that they, want to save a really hype bay like that for, the last one. But the thing is, Death Scyther just does not strike me as a good final release, It's not it's popular, but it's nothing too crazy. It's not as popular as some of the other super popular bases that have already gotten evolutions, which would actually make sense to end the series with. And it's just not quite interesting enough to really be crazy enough to just be like a kind of a wow factor for a final release. Genesis did not place top 8 in the poll, but I think Genesis is still a pretty popular bay overall, especially with its gimmicks. It had two of the craziest gimmicks of all time, with the infinite lock system and also having an electric driver. While other bays had these gimmicks, Genesis was the first and did both, and no other bay did that. They had one or the other. I think ending on Genesis would be a very sensible move, giving us kind of this last crazy bay to end on. And I think since we've already used up all the other popular motifs and whatnot, I just think, honestly, just end with something crazy and Genesis really would fill that role. So, there you have it. My election theory. That's kind of just what I think that they'll do. That's kind of my... Now, obviously, I could be wrong on some of these things. I do think that, yeah, the random booster with Kronos being in the third one, that's very likely. I also really believe Genesis will be the final booster, as well as Death Aether kind of being like the December booster. Also pretty confident on the Sparking Bays being paired together, at least Hyperion and Helios. Lucifer, honestly, I have no clue, but might as well throw them into an SP set together. But I guess I could, release Lucifer elsewhere. The other boosters are subject to change. I'm not entirely sure on all of them. But I do think all these evolutions will happen. Part of the reason why I wanted this roadmap is just because, again, there were like 10 extra evolutions after, September, and that just seems far-fetched. But I kind of think this roadmap is at least somewhat realistic. I don't think it's too crazy. I mean, it's the end of Burst. I don't think that trying to be reasonable about the end of a normal season really applies here, so I think going a little bit crazier is fine. But that's my election theory. I feel like anything else I'm going to say is just going to drag this video out even more than it already is. It's already a long video. But I just want to talk about it because, I don't know, it just seems like an interesting idea. So yeah. Let me know if you guys agree with this at all. Also, sorry that this video was a little bit weird, because I kind of might have coughed or like taken a few deep breaths. I'm getting over this throat issue I had, so I'm still like slightly short of breath, so I do apologize for that. But anyways, that's everything. Let me know down in the comments if you agree or want to add anything to my theory here, or if you disagree and want to just make fun of me for being extremely wrong. Honestly, go for it. That's fine. I'm just here to make a theory. I'm not saying that this is going to happen. I do think it probably will to some extent, but I could be very wrong as well. We'll see what happens, honestly. So yeah, I'm probably going to come back to this video in a few months, and we'll see if I was either just some 10 billion IQ prediction god, or if I was horribly wrong. This is just a very poorly aged video. Hopefully it'll be fun either way. But yeah, let me know in the comments if I'm potentially correct or just hilariously wrong. So yeah, thanks for watching, and bye-bye.